and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon-neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thank you very much for joining the conversation today. Imagine the circular economy, a world in which everything we buy and use is collected and recycled, composted, or passed on for continued use in order to lower our environmental impact as a society. The vision sounds a long way off, and it will be a long time until everything can be recycled and composted economically. A few companies, however, are pioneering circularity, including Loop, a consortium of consumer packaged goods brands spearheaded by the specialty recycler Terracycle. But I've been intrigued by small startup companies that have introduced circular products. And our guest today is Lindsey McCoy, who started Plaine Products with her sister Alison in 2017. Today, Plaine Products offers 16 fully circular personal care products, including shampoo, conditioner, moisturizer, and lotion. Their personal care products are made with vegan ingredients and come in aluminum bottles that customers rinse and return to be refilled when they're empty. When a customer runs low, they order a new bottle that arrives before they run out, along with a return mail label. So after swapping the pump to the new container, the empty can be placed back in the shipping box to be sent back to Plaine Products, where it's cleaned, refilled, and sold again. To date, Plaine Products has prevented more than 540,000 plastic bottles from being used once and tossed in a landfill, or worse, escaping into nature as pollution. There are a lot of lessons to learn from the Plaine Products story, and maybe all of us can take some inspiration from the success of this scrappy circular economy leader. You can shop for Plaine Products at plaineproducts.com and check the podcast description on Earth911 or at your podcast service for a link that will get you 20% off when ordering Plaine Products. Please be aware that Earth911 will earn a small commission that goes toward maintaining our recycling, composting, reuse, and circular services directory. Welcome to the show, Lindsey. How are you today?
Good, Mitch. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm glad that it's not too smoky in the southeast today. I know you've had some bad weather, but welcome back to normal life.
Wait, is there normal anymore, Mitch? I'm not even sure.
I thought of that as I said it, so I agree. Point taken. So tell us about the origins of Plaine Products. You had an inspiration to launch a company that makes refillable personal care products. Where did that happen?
So my background's actually in nonprofit management. When I was growing up, 80s, 90s, if you wanted to do good in the world, you didn't go into business.
Mm-hmm.
So, found another way. So I ended up studying first government and then nonprofit management, worked in Colorado and Boulder for a foundation for a while, ended up in the Bahamas where my husband is from. And, at that point, my only environmental credential actually was that I'd lived in Boulder, Colorado. And I knew what the term.
But you knew how to recycle.
Yeah, I knew how to recycle. I'd heard the term zero waste at the farmer's market. But getting to be involved in environmental work in the Bahamas meant I got to meet a lot of very smart scientists, and I got to go to a lot of beautiful places. And I would go to these beautiful remote places and find plastic. And then I do beach cleanups with kids and find plastic. And then I just be out and about on my own and find plastic. And so when scientists started to say around 2015 that there could be more plastic than fish in the ocean, I was like, unfortunately, I can see that.
Yeah.
It's washing up in all of these places. The Bahamas does not have the same infrastructure that we have here in the States to make things disappear when we're done with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I started trying to use less plastic just personally. The reusable water bottles, reusable bags, the things that we're kind of all doing. But all of the plastic bottles in my shower really just honestly started to irritate me. That I had to just keep throwing them away. There was no plastic recycling in the Bahamas. And this will, also betray my age. I was like, why couldn't we do something like how Netflix started? Where, back in the day, you get a DVD, you'd watch it, you'd send it back, you'd get another. Yeah. And so that was kind of my shower inspiration was, why can't I just reuse these bottles? At the time, nothing like that existed. We decided for other reasons to move back to the States in 2015, education, my son, I was sort of ready to do something not nonprofit. And so I was like, maybe I could start a company and solve this a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Actually called my sister And together we decided to start Plaine Products and have that circular.
So how did that happen? Did you bootstrap this? Did you raise funding, or did you qualify for some kind of support?
No, we very much bootstrapped it. We bought 3,000 aluminum bottles and got them filled by a manufacturer and started selling them online. Is how we started.
It's a true entrepreneurial story. Congratulations. Well played. Now, you did this as a B Corp from the beginning.
You have to be in business, I think, for a year before you can become a B Corp. But yes,
you intended to.
My eye was on it for several reasons. I mean, one, not having a traditional business background, I was looking for ways to learn, for standards to set, for ideas and how to set up something that could be responsible from the get-go. I mean, as I mentioned, at the beginning of my career, you didn't go into business to do good. And so when I heard about B Corps and I saw more social entrepreneurship, as I was working in nonprofits, that interested me. And I wanted to follow in those footsteps. And so B Corp provides a lovely, very intense checklist of all of the things that you need to have if you are going to be a business for good. So,
what kind of benefits does that offer an entrepreneur who embraces the idea? What, in addition to just being efficient and good, how does it help?
It holds your feet to the fire. It says here are the things you're going to be measured on. And so as you're making choices, you're like, oh, I got to remember that I'm going to be asked whether or not I took, my employees, the environment, good governance into account as I make these decisions, that I'm tracking my water, that I'm tracking my electricity, that I'm tracking my waste, that I have all of the employee policies, that I'm offering good things, all of these things, because there's a sort of pretest that you can take, while you're waiting. So I went through that and I was like, okay, this is everything that I need to have. This is everything that I need to take into account. And then always in the back of your mind, I'm going to have to re-up in 3 years, 2 years. They're going to ask me these questions. And that is very helpful when you're making choices, to know that there is an external body that you're going to have to account to.
It served as a North Star.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. A North Star, and just a way of, as I said, I think a matrix for helping me make decisions, weigh the cost benefit of different things. They have a point system. So I was able to say, well, okay, this is important that I do this. And there are some trade-offs. There are some things that we don't have a external board of governors at this point, which is, something as a small company.
Well, those trade-offs, that's a really interesting question. Every organization's context is unique. And as you're pointing out, you don't have that external board, but you do have other things. What do you think the most important trade-off decisions that you've made have been?
Well, I mean, honestly, the way we do business, taking these bottles back and washing and refilling them, is not the most cost-effective way to do business, as many, many companies have proven. But we have chosen that that's sort of, the stake we've planted in the ground. And so our decisions are not just based on profit. I mean, they're based on people, planet, and profit. I do believe that choosing to have a circular model has helped us as a small company make a name for ourselves, has helped us compete in the larger world, has given us a story to tell. But certainly if we were only looking at making profit, this is not how you would do it.
Well, you've also tackled two different problems. One is making vegan products, and the other is the refillable packaging we've already talked about.
Obviously much cheaper to put water and chemicals in a bottle than it is to have a bunch of natural ingredients.
Well, which was the harder problem to solve, the vegan ingredients or the refillable packaging?
Both. Both.
Okay.
We got into this for, to try and help reduce waste in the world, to see if a circular model would work, to see if there were people who were interested in that. Then I started learning about ingredients. I considered myself a relatively educated consumer, but I had no idea how many chemicals were in mainstream products and how concerning a lot of them were to our health. So that was a huge learning curve for me. So as we looked at different manufacturers to work with, all of a sudden, the bar kept getting higher of this has to work. And what's the point of creating an environmentally friendly package and then putting a bunch of chemicals that I wouldn't want washed down the drain? or that I wouldn't want on my body or on my child's body.
Well, as we've spoken offline about this. You have embraced the idea, as we do here at Earth911, that perfection is the enemy of progress. How did that idea help you break down this launch into manageable projects, to tractable problems?
I think there was just first an acceptance of it wasn't going to ever be perfect, but we had to start somewhere. And a goal to just continue learning and striving to do better. I mean, I think we've redone the packaging 4 or 5 times now, changed taglines. I started with, join the packaging revolution. And it turned out that didn't mean anything to anyone. Your average person doesn't care about packaging. That word doesn't mean anything to them. So yeah, we went with sort of that business concept, minimally viable product. We launched with 3 products in 1 cent and just wanted to see if there was an appetite for this. And happily, there are people that are interested and not continuing to throw things away, that are interested in consuming differently and participating in the solution. I mean, people are like excited. We don't offer any incentives right now to send things back, mainly because we couldn't afford the tracking when we were getting started. And people do. I mean, people do send them back with little love notes, or make sure that we got it. So
are they interested in the tracking now? Are you hearing that from them?
It's honestly other companies that are more interested in the tracking than the consumers are interested in the tracking. So we're looking at it. But again, covering the cost of taking the bottles back, covering the cost of responsible ingredients, we're at a higher price point. I mean, honestly, not that much higher than other organic vegan products, but still, as a nonprofit girl, higher than I'd like to be. So at this point, I still can't justify the extra cost of the added tracking, but as the cost comes down and technology goes up, it may be something that we integrate in the future.
Well, tell us how the process works when somebody has purchased and they send it back. What happens before that bottle is reused and sent back out?
So, you order a product online, then as you're running low, order a refill. That refill comes with a return label. So people put the empty bottles back, send it back to us. We get the box, open it, make sure that the bottle's in good shape. The main thing that we're looking for is those aluminum bottles do have a liner that makes sure that the aluminum and the product don't interact, because aluminum, has its own problems. So, big dents could potentially crack that liner. So that's mainly what we're checking for. Drain the bottles if they're not already. We do a kind of pre-wash and a post-wash. We've borrowed from the bartender's friend, like a little scrub brush that we put it over. And then we put it in a bottle rack and an industrial bottle washer. And it goes through a cycle. And then we send it over to the dryer. And it gets dried, and then it gets stored to go back down and be refilled.
The other thing about the process that I found interesting is you have a subscription program, but of course people consume this kind of product at very different rates. So how do you do a subscription if it's monthly, for instance? How does that work?
We have a lot of options for subscriptions. So anything from monthly to 6 months to yearly, even for some people. So
you can specify this during your subscription sign up.
Yes, we have a lot of, it's that always that tough between enough choice and not too much choice paralysis. But we've tried to walk that line and offer, as I said, 2, 4, 6. And then, people sometimes contact us and we'll set up something individually for them from anywhere from monthly to yearly.
Interesting. Now, it's always interesting to think about the fact that there's a plastic bag inside every aluminum bottle or can. I hadn't thought about the inside. I'd been thinking about the outside. How many times can a bottle be used before it becomes no longer aesthetically pleasing enough for you to consider it a useful product?
We're still figuring that out and we're still experimenting. When we started, we were using a process that kind of almost put paint on the outside of the bottle with one color, because that's what we could afford. And we were seeing that we were losing about 20% of the bottles to that chipping off.
Right.
So that felt like too much to us. So we now have 2 different methods going. We were able, with our higher volume shampoo and conditioner, to actually print in the bottle like an aluminum can. So there's nothing to chip off. And then for our smaller volume products, we tried a thick label that thus far holds up great to washing. So we're doing both of those, and we don't honestly know. I mean, they're still going. But as you mentioned, our product cycle is long. We've had them for about a year. So I think we're on our second cycle with some of the bottles. And we're just going to keep going as long as we can. I mean, certainly we washed both of them 10 to 20 times before we even started to make sure that it could hold up. And that doesn't seem to be a limiting factor.
Do you have a sense of how many times it has to be used for it to be economically viable for you?
I've seen a few. Well, there's two. There's economically viable, and then there's, life cycle analysis. I've seen something that says it needs to be, at least 3 times from a life cycle perspective to make sense. I've seen 10 times. For us, honestly, the cost by the time we get it back and wash it is a little the same or a little higher than buying a new bottle. So again, to my earlier point of this is not the way to make money. But I feel like it's a responsible way to do business. And, certainly the higher volume of reuse, those costs will come down. I mean, in a perfect world, if more companies were doing this, if more cities were doing this, there would be reuse stations around the country. We wouldn't be shipping them back and forth around the country to get them back to us. And all of those costs would continue to decrease.
Now, if a customer has a terribly dented or scratched bottle, so it's effectively unreturnable, what can they do with it?
We encourage them to recycle it locally. And, again, the lovely thing about aluminum is of all of the things, it seems like it is, well, you're the expert, but the most likely to successfully be recycled. So
as long as you wash it and send it in dry, it's perfectly acceptable in almost any program in the United States.
Yes. So that is the one beauty of it. And I mean, again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but as I learned, plastic usually can only be recycled once or twice before it becomes unusable and is thrown away. Aluminum, it has a much longer life cycle.
Yeah, well, actually, we're on the verge of seeing plastic go from a 1 or 2 to longer. We don't yet know how many with some new technology, but your point about the infinite recyclability of the metal is well taken. This is something that, in aluminum's case, about 75% of the stuff that's ever been mined is still in use. So it's a very malleable and reusable material. Do you have a sense of the comparative environmental impact of the two different types of packaging, that plastic and aluminum? Have you thought about and explored that as you do your research?
I mean, yeah, this goes back to your point about perfection early on. There is, short of making all of your own products and using them up within your home, there is nothing that doesn't have an impact. I think our goal and what we're looking at is not only the impact of extracting those things, but then the full life cycle. I mean, unfortunately, when plastic does end up in a landfill, there's still, pollution and off-gassing that continues to occur at that point. So while, aluminum is not the perfect, at least being able, in theory, to keep something out of the waste cycle completely is sort of what we're interested in, and then continuing to learn and improve upon that as we go.
Well, that's a perfectly good place for us to take a commercial break, because there's a lot of imperfection to talk about yet. We'll get back to this in just a moment. Hey, extended producer responsibility change makers, let's unite. Meet me and the Earth911 team in Portland, Oregon this September at the 2023 U.S. Product Stewardship Forum, the nation's only conference dedicated to EPR legislation and best practices. The circular economy is being crafted today, brick by brick, with EPR legislation, and packaging recycling efforts are leading the way. 2022 saw unprecedented momentum, with 18 states considering over 60 EPR bills, and 6 became law. This year in Portland, you'll find exclusive insights from globally recognized EPR experts. The Product Stewardship Institute invites you, the movers who will shake their regional recycling and composting systems with new ideas. Network. Hone your EPR knowledge and form strategic alliances to drive the circular results this world needs. Now is the time for producer responsibility. So join us at the 2023 U.S. Product Stewardship Forum in Portland, Oregon. That happens from September 11th to 14th. Register today at productstewardship.us. Product stewardship is all one word, no space, no dash. Productstewardship.us. Be a part of the solution because stewardship starts with you. Let's return to the conversation with Lindsey McCoy, CEO and co-founder of Plaine Products, which makes a wide range of circular personal care products. You know, Lindsey, I was really impressed by your shipping packaging. There was no plastic inside other than the pump that goes into the product. No plastic tape, and the box is completely recyclable. How does that embrace of sustainability in your packaging change your costs? Is it more expensive to ship in your packaging, or are other brands just not trying hard enough?
Both.
Okay.
both are true. We do invest a little bit more in our boxes to make them a little thicker to protect those aluminum bottles. But because of our circular model, we get a lot of those back and we reuse them. So we actually see that as a way to spread that cost out. So I don't think that costs us much more. The paper tape is obviously more expensive than plastic tape, but again, why go to all of this trouble and then make the boxes harder to recycle by putting plastic tape on them? I mean, to me, that just doesn't make sense. And then, we did design the boxes. We have inserts instead of plastic fill. I'm sure that's a little bit more expensive, but it just makes sense. Why, again, add some unnecessary plastic if you can just do it better? So it is a little bit more expensive, but again, I feel like to our customers, it's almost a marketing cost to me of, we're going to attract customers for this reason and then send them a bottle with a bunch of bubble fill around it. Like I wouldn't use that. I'd be frustrated and mad. So, it's just part of, again, starting from a place of sustainability, which is where we as a company started, and as a B Corp, answering all of these questions about our suppliers and our products and just ourselves. When you make a product for yourself, you also answer those questions of like, would I be frustrated if I got this package full of plastic? Yes, I would be if I was buying a product that I thought was environmentally responsible.
Well, do customers take pride in the fact that they're reusing the box too? Do they enjoy the fact there's multiple labels on something that they're sending back?
Yeah, no, they do. Occasionally somebody will say, but for the most part, yes. I think when people buy from us, they are buying into the entire model. We don't get really complaints about, the age of the boxes, which is great. I think, and the transparency we do a lot of on our social, videos of which are amazing to me, but people love them. Here we are in the warehouse, emptying out the bottles, washing the bottles, stacking the boxes for reuse. Here we are putting bottles in older boxes and sending them back out. So it is pretty easy to tell that we do what we say we do. I mean, if you just look at some of our boxes, you can tell they've been around the block a few times.
Let's talk about that one piece of plastic, the pump. Do pump designs limit their recyclability intrinsically, and have you explored alternatives that might be recyclable?
So a few things about the pump. One, we really encourage people to reuse the original pump that we send them. So I think we're one of the few companies that just do not automatically send a pump anytime you order a product.
Yeah, I saw that as a benefit, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. I don't, it is harder. It is more confusing. It requires, more effort on the website. And again, there's trade-offs there. I mean, we couldn't just use a generic template website. We had to kind of get somebody to design something for us to make that an option with each product. But again, it was important to me. I mean, I buy some protein shake mix and I get so irritated that there's a new scoop every time. Yeah. I don't need a scoop. I got plenty of scoops. Please stop making me buy this stupid scoop. So my own personal bias, I hate waste. I hate unnecessary things. So yes, we send a pump once and then we encourage people to just get the refill bottle and the return label. No more pumps.
And just to be clear, if they do need a pump, you have them.
Oh yeah, no. We send them with the first purchase. And if you want more, you can come back. But yeah, pumps are very hard to recycle. We do work with a group called PACT that started in the consumer or the beauty industry. It's a conglomerate of a bunch of beauty companies that are trying to move recycling forward, hard to recycle products. So if people do send their pumps back to us, we can work with PAC to make sure they're recycled. But yes, as you mentioned, there are many different types of plastic. There's a spring. I mean, if you were just to put that pump in your curbside recycle bin, it would not be recycled.
Right.
There are many people working on pump options, trying to make them either out of metal or out of more recyclable, to the learning piece, to the perfection piece. We're waiting. We're talking to people. We're happy to be a pilot. When somebody cracks that, it'll be very exciting.
I think the other thing that I'm looking for in a pump, this is just consumer feedback, is help with portion control. Because one of the problems with shampoo is, you just, and it's all gone very quickly. Yes. Could you say this is the ideal amount with one pump?
We went with a pump that has a smaller, it's like a 2 cc. I don't want to say that other companies purposely make you turn it upside down and squeeze because you use more, but it does seem like that's part of what they're going for. So yes, I'm sure that there is a perfect serving size. Unfortunately, as we discussed earlier, everybody has very different needs. I mean, my shampoo needs are probably different than your shampoo needs as far as what's the perfect pump.
Well, my quarter inch of what hair is left certainly requires less shampoo than yours.
And, again, there's a difference. Our products are aloe-based. So we encourage people to not use much and add a little bit of water as they're shampooing. So, that's a piece of it too. The other comment that I want to get back to, just when you were talking about costs, as I'm sure you're aware, in this country right now, fossil fuels are still subsidized.
Yeah.
So the cost that I am paying, for an aluminum bottle and a lot of natural ingredients is really on an unfair playing field when the cost of a plastic bottle is not its actual cost, nor is it long-term cost. There's no responsibility right now that you have to take for the waste of that bottle. So while our costs are higher, I hope one day that we get to a point where those fossil fuels are no longer subsidized and there is some sort of extended producer responsibility or some means for people to have to say, it's no longer their problem once they sell it. They have to take some responsibility for the product they create. That our products would be much more, comparable to what is now a plastic bottle with water and a lot of chemicals in it.
Now, you just mentioned aloe, which is generally available here in North America. Where do you source the ingredients? And are you trying to keep your supply chain as short as possible to reduce the emissions associated with what's in the bottle?
I mean, I think everybody's trying to keep their supply chain as short as possible, not only for emissions, but I think COVID taught us all that the closer, the better. And happily, we work with a really family business manufacturer that is very concerned with supply chain and sustainability and natural ingredients. And so they have chemists and sourcers on staff, and happily we partner with them to handle all of that because that is a very intense portion of the business. So they handle all the regulation, all the testing, all the sourcing for us. And we're honestly more of a distribution company at this point.
Well, that raises the question about your corporate emissions and your waste and other recycling goals. So you largely count on your production partner, to accomplish those efforts. Does your company have emissions goals, and have you made those public yet? And if not, why?
That's a very interesting question. As a very small company, just in 2022, we moved out of my sister's garage into a facility. We bought an old building and renovated it. So we're getting there. I mean, I think, there's 4 full-time staff and we have a lot of part-time staff, but level 1, 2, and 3 emissions are something that we're working to understand and figure out. And, there's a lot of it, as you mentioned, beyond our control.
Yeah.
So we do talk to our manufacturer about it, in a perfect world, if we were perfect, we would have all of that in-house and we'd be able to control all of it. But
I don't know how geeky you get about this, but do you have a sense of what your scope 1 and 2 emissions are, the direct emissions at this point?
Honestly, no. I mean, I have an understanding of it, but it's not something that we've been able to calculate with anything that I would feel comfortable giving you a number.
Fair enough. And I think, especially for a lot of smaller organizations that are dependent on other parts of their supply chain so deeply, this is a consistent problem. So I look forward to hearing more about that as you guys get there. Now, you mentioned Netflix, and that was their initial strategy of mailing DVDs was a placeholder because they knew streaming was coming. I even had a conversation with Reed Hastings about this at one point. You've had your Netflix transition moment. You've introduced refill stations. So now you can go to more than 270 retail stores to get a refill. Tell us about what that experience is like. What happens when I go to a refill station with a Plaine product package?
So as we talked about, we originally started direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
That's still 70% of our business is direct to consumer. Small staff. So wholesale sales is tricky for us.
Mm-hmm.
But we had the wonderful situation of people coming to us and saying, hey, we'd love to be able to sell your products in our refill store. We've
Mm-hmm.
heard good things about them. People love that they can refill their bottles. What do you think? So turns out that's a whole other business. We had to spend time figuring out what we could put it in that we could
Mm-hmm.
reuse. I mean, we didn't want to break the chain with this new model. But there is nothing that existed that was large enough in aluminum, that was cost effective, that we could get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up with two different things, a plastic bucket, but that we do take back and reuse, of 3.5 gallon plastic bucket, and then a gallon glass jar, like a mason jar,
Mm-hmm.
are the two different things that we now offer bulk products in.
So do I buy these buckets or do I fill it from these buckets?
You fill these from these buckets. So our refill partners around the country, as you mentioned, there's about 270 more all of the time,
Mm-hmm.
have these. You come in, you can bring your own bottle. Often these shops have bottles or have containers. It doesn't even have to be one of our bottles. It can be anything.
Yeah.
You weigh it as you walk in the shop, fill it up with as much or as little as you want, pay the difference in the weight. There's a cost per ounce, and
Sure.
then take it home. So, reuse and circularity looks different to a lot of different people. Obviously, local is always better. I mean, it's much more efficient for us to ship a 3.5 gallon bucket to someone than
Mm-hmm.
the 30 bottles that are within that bucket to 30 different people. So reuse is great, but there's also the reality that just doesn't work for everybody's lifestyle. So for the people that it does, it is a very responsible way from an emissions perspective, from a cost perspective to do it. There are some people that, that just doesn't work for them. So,
well, for those that are interested in it, what kinds of products do you think, based on your experience, are fitted for the refill approach? Have you looked around and thought, why on earth isn't that refillable?
I mean, there are more all the time, and we're a part of that. So, I think most grocery stores, the first thing that you see is these sort of dry good bulk refill bins, which are super easy. It's
Mm-hmm.
super easy to have a jar and fill up your cashews.
Yep.
People are moving into cleaning products, which again, are a good fit. Personal care is coming along. Anything that's easy to pump out and doesn't kind of make a mess. Although now I've seen carafes, like the coffee carafes, people are using that more and more for liquids, like cleaning products. You can open and close that. So people are getting creative. I've really yet to see something that you can't find a solution for. I mean, really the only thing you can't, prepackaged, pre-made goods. But as long as you're looking for, pretty base products, I think you can do a lot of it with reuse.
Well, it'd be interesting to see a much broader and deeper experimentation around that with the same aggressiveness that you took to begin with. And I hope we do see it. Now, you made it's a pretty frank and possibly controversial statement on your site, which is that we're never going to reach zero waste. To your point earlier, everything has an impact. What is Plaine Products' goals for its customers in terms of how you plan to help them live more sustainably? How do you articulate that to a customer when you're speaking with them?
Well, There's a few different pieces. I mean, I think one, zero implies a level of perfection
Mm-hmm.
That can scare people away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, somebody could give them the excuse to say, well, I'm never going to be zero waste. What's the point of even trying? And in the way our society works today, it is nearly impossible. I mean, I won't say impossible, but nearly impossible to be zero waste. I mean, there's just so much packaging. There's so much plastic. There's so many things that you can't recycle. Although, as you mentioned, people are working on it, that I feel like that term just sets up an unachievable goal and gives people a reason to not get started. So that's part of why we embrace this progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. Do what you can. Celebrate the times you're able to reuse, celebrate the times that you're able to, get those cashews at the bulk bin or order a product that's more sustainable than something that you've ordered in the past, and move in that direction as opposed to an all or nothing mentality.
As you think about the conversations you've had with other executives in other categories, not just your own, when you imagine a circular economy, say in 10 or 20 years, how much or what percentage of stuff do you think we will be reusing or recycling or recirculating instead of sending to landfill?
Well, I mean, I think packaging makes up a pretty big percentage of what we're sending to the landfill. I mean, between packaging and food waste, that accounts for a lot of what goes. So, if we can eliminate a lot of that packaging, I would think that, and work on food waste, I would think that would get us huge portion of the way there. And as I mentioned, really scale is part of the issue right now. And the lovely piece is that this infrastructure is cheap relatively. I mean, we're talking about storage and dishwashers, and it's not hard to do. It just takes a little bit more effort and a little retraining. I mean, this is what our economy looked like in the 30s and 40s and 50s before plastic became widespread. Could
we accelerate that progress by sharing the infrastructure more efficiently than we do today? Should you be working with other companies so that all of you are refilling through the same processes?
Certainly, those conversations are being had. And a lot of sustainable businesses, us included, are talking to each other about how we can do that. I mean, I will say one of the lovely pieces about being a sustainable business is that the other companies that we work with are interested in these topics and want to work together. I mean, I share all the time how we wash our bottles, where we get our bottle washer from. We talk about sourcing. How do we, kind of keep things aligned so that we can work together? Those conversations are happening, and people are very interested in that.
If folks wanted to follow those conversations, where would you suggest that they start?
Upstream is a group that's doing a lot of good work. There's a Portland Reuse group in your area. 3R. I will.
Yep, I know of them.
They're doing some really interesting work around reuse and standards. Those are probably the two. Beyond Plastics over in New York is putting together an alliance. So there's quite a few groups that are working on it.
I'm curious, as you look at that, do you also see the differences between different states as one of the barriers to success in aggregating those kinds of infrastructures?
No, at this point, because I don't think that we are going to, unfortunately, maybe in the long term as government comes into play, but government has been so slow to move on these types of things that I think it's going to be more independent to start with. I mean, certainly we would love to have assistance with infrastructure, but I think that's going to be a little ways down the line. There are a lot of barriers and lobbyists between government involvement.
Well, you mentioned extended producer responsibility regulations earlier. Do you think that we need a national EPR standard rather than a 50 state standards?
I mean, that would be lovely, but I don't see it happening.
Not in our country. We're free.
Yes. Often states lead the way in these things. And certainly in those states, if some of that money gets channeled into reuse, which those conversations are happening, that infrastructure may come online quicker and that will probably influence things. So to your earlier question, maybe my answer was wrong. Maybe it will affect it.
Well, let's find out. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. Besides using the link in our podcast to get a discount, when you visit Plaine Products. How can our listeners follow along with what you're working on and maybe share their ideas for refillable products they'd like to see with you?
Yeah, certainly we love customer feedback and ideas. So we are on all the socials, Plaine Products, Plaine with an E. My sister and I actually share the maiden name of Della Plaine, which is where that name came from. So Plaine Products. And we would love to hear from people.
Well, thanks for spending time with us, Lindsey. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Mitch. This has been a very thought-provoking conversation.
We've been speaking with Lindsey McCoy, CEO and co-founder with her sister Alison of Plaine Products. Plaine is spelled Plaine, as she explained. They make more than a dozen personal care products that come in reusable packaging. And you can check the podcast description for a link that will give you a 20% discount when ordering at www.plaineproducts.com. Plaine Products is all one word, no space, no dash, folks. Plaineproducts.com. The take, make, waste economy has brought humanity to the brink of ecological disaster. Earlier this month, in July 2023, the planet actually breached the 1.5 degrees centigrade increase in temperature over pre-industrial levels for just one day. That doesn't mean we've gone over the waterfall, but we're right there. The climate crisis is here. It's getting hotter, and each of us needs to take action to reduce our impact. Circular packaging and refill strategies are one important way that you can change your environmental footprint. And of course, a lot more improvements are needed in the distribution and returns infrastructure to drive the emissions, water, and other environmental impacts that we have lower. But if we start reducing packaging waste by reusing it while electrifying shipping using renewable energy, the momentum can turn toward a lower impact economy. Lindsey's comparison of Plaine Products to Netflix is a telling one. It shows how looking past today's shortcomings. For instance, there was a time when streaming video couldn't easily match the quality of a DVD, but Netflix won millions of customers over to a mail-in DVD rental model that set the stage for its explosive growth when network bandwidth made the DVD itself obsolete. By looking forward to circular strategies, companies can lay the foundation for success and profit and I think that those companies with the courage to explore reuse instead of the old take, make, waste ways are the ones who are going to win out in the long term. We will continue to talk with innovators to keep you updated about new circular options. Hey, I hope you'll take a moment to share this podcast or any of the more than 400 other interviews that we produced on sustainability in your ear. If you'd take a moment to write a review on your favorite podcast platform, I love this show. You need to listen to it. That will help your neighbors find us. You folks are the amplifiers that help spread more ideas so we can have less waste. Tell your friends, family, coworkers, everyone you know that you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the other fine purveyors of podcast goodness out there. Thanks, folks, for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Earth911, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.